Hey everyone, in this video let's check Touhou spell Carnival. The main reason why I wanted to test this game was because it looked in a certain way like Nights in the Nightmare. Lots of bullets left and right while managing different characters. The question is, was it worth playing it? I ask it like that because this game was also co-developed between Idea Factory and Steam Entertainment. And yep, let's remember that Nights in the Nightmare was developed by Steam, while it was published by Atlus. Without further ado, let's dive into the story, gameplay, graphics and music. Touhou Spell Carnival begins explaining that in this time around, and as usual, Giacomo is hosting a festival where people put their spell cards on the line. Her idea was to pull Reimu into this crusade, and here we are 13 days after the festival began. Reimu and Marisa are running away from Remilia, as it sounds like their sneaking backfired, and while our duo had the chance to run quite far, Yuyuko and Youmu decided to assist Remilia. That is how she was able to reach Reimu, and well, as usual she is eager to fight, so there is a small confrontation between the three. Of course, for plot reasons Reimu and Marisa win, lifting a kind of curse from Remilia, who quickly regains consciousness, something that was expected by our duo. The same with a pillar that moments later broke. This is where the game let us know that effectively there is something going on, as Giacomo states that the carnival is starting to take motion, while Okina states that this is the moment to take action. After this event we are thrown to the day the spell carnival began, where Reimu sees plenty of pillars all over the place. Moments later Marisa appears, stating that this is part of Giacomo's carnival, and so she gives Reimu an envelope, but by opening it, she pretty much accepts that she wants to participate. This is pretty much how Marisa and Reimu decide to work together to win this carnival, while unraveling what's going on behind scenes. The main thing I have to point out is that in general Touhou games take for granted that you know these characters since the get-go. So if you don't know them, several interactions may feel kinda off. And the game throws more and more of these interactions after each chapter, and I have to be honest. While I know some of these girls, it is also true that I do not know some others. So it would have been nice to have something like a little background, perhaps in which game they originally appeared and some details like that. But okay, let's imagine that we know them. After this point the story will revolve around the idea of the pillars and how people start to behave in weird ways, trying to win in this carnival. So in my humble opinion there are plenty of silly interactions, and unlike some other Touhou games I have shared in this channel, this time around I found the main idea a bit more entertaining. But the cherry on top comes with the voice actresses. If you look around who gave life to each girl, you will find curious surprises. For example, Maya Uchida, playing Rem and Remilia.
知らぬ仲じゃないし、そうじゃ気にしないでよ。そう、この戦い、誰にも譲ることはできないわ。
The same with Reimu and Marisa. So you have me going like, I kinda remember that voice. So for me the story is a 7. It is decent enough to be entertained, and there are plenty of conversations, plus some before events that let you catch to the whole plot. Of course they take a while to be unlocked, but they were good to watch. Gameplay wise, it is a real-time strategy bullet hell RPG if that makes sense. This Touhou entry is relatively similar as others, where after you finish a stage, another appears, so we are going to follow the same formula until we finish. The only thing worth mentioning is that as you advance other characters will appear, and sometimes you will have to choose between two different routes. In all honesty, I will say, don't sweat it. All of them have advantages and disadvantages. In the end, what's truly important is the synergy between each party member. On this front, the only thing I gotta say is, do not underestimate this game. If you're not that good micromanaging, easy or normal are good starting points. Of course, normally it is quite challenging, but hard in this game is simply relentless, unless you know what you're doing. At first there are no real complications, as you play with 2 members, then 3, 4 and 5, but what I found tricky is how to manage each character on their own. I tried multiple times to make different strategies, but between having to check bullets everywhere, things can go downhill real fast, and yep, randomly playing is the least of issues, but trying to effectively avoid everything turns into a nightmare. It is not easy at all. On this front, the game gives you the chance to move every character in unison, and to be honest, that is what I ended up doing. The same can be done with basic actions, but they are only helpful if you want to get rid of 1 or 2 enemies relatively fast. However, it is not recommended, because you won't be able to use the best moves to properly defend your team. For example, here you can see how each member feels something like a gouge. In essence, every move uses 1 or more points, so everything depends on the number of enemies around, and the kind of combos you want to execute. In my case, what I ended up doing was setting a small barrier with Remilia. Reimu was the main medic, while Aya, Flan and Marisa spam different kinds of attacks. But if you just quickly attack, you can run out of these points, and that leaves the whole crew without barriers. Something cool is that there are a lot of characters, and while some share some moves, ultimately they have different stats, special attacks and uses. Perhaps my only complaint here is that Reimu felt like the only good healer, as others aren't as efficient, so in a sense it feels like the game wants you to use her in every formation. But there may be other ways to set up defensive characters plus weaker healing moves. And that is pretty much the level of customization that Touhou Spell Carnival gives you. You can also get some basic equipment, but it doesn't really change, so here we follow a classic formula where as we advance, we can get better things. The only pieces of equipment we cannot get in this way are the personal weapons, but all you gotta do is fight once again the stage where you got that particular ally. What's worth checking out down the line are the special moves and some secondary skills, because as your characters level up, they unlock passive skills and other moves. However, some special moves use much more points to be activated, but in the end, it is all about experimentation, as sometimes you can find creative strategies while messing around. As for the bosses, I would say that most stages have a boss fight, or in this case, another named enemy, let's call these girls like that. And that is the most dynamic part of the game, because at first there isn't that big of a deal, but somewhere at the mid of the game they start to use their special attacks every time you deplete one of their HP bars. So you will have to deplete their HP multiple times, and between those multiple times they may get you in a terrible position, where they can destroy your whole squad in 1 second. Literally, there were times where I had no chance to move anyone, as they fall like flies if some of these special attacks hit them directly. While bosses are the ones who oftentimes disappear your allies, it is also true that some enemies gang on a specific character, destroying fragile ones in matter of seconds, so you have me looking at their HP, the whole mess where I have my allies, and the kinds of moves I wanted to use. So you have to be fast deciding if you want to move your units or keep spamming attacks. Considering all of this, to me the gameplay is an 8.5. I definitely enjoy it, but it can feel unfair if enemies get you in a bad position, and the main level of customization can be a bit simplistic, unless you decide to tackle hard difficulty, and the game pushes you to meticulously check each party member to properly synergize moves. In the graphics section I check aesthetics, glitches and other visual things. This is the PS5 version of the game, and I had no issues while playing. It never froze, had drops or other things worth mentioning. On the other hand, it is cool that the Spell Carnival ran like butter on bread, considering that each second counts, as you have to choose multiple attacks or more or less keep track of the whole mess. Now, to be completely fair, this game doesn't have the best of looks. I will say it is simple and accomplishes perfectly well its objective. I mean that you won't see animated scenes or overly complex stuff, like an 80% of the interactions will be shown as a visual novel, but I gotta recognize that Idea Factory and Compile Heart have a lot of experience on this front, so each girl has an interesting set of moves while having conversations. As for the general gameplay, I believe this part was developed by Sting Entertainment. Yep, it is rather interesting to see that they also helped here, as they have a similar chibi aesthetic like in Madou Monogatari, Fia and the Wanderer's Academy. Personally, I don't mind the chibi art, but I know a lot of people who find it unappealing or childish. In my eyes, I believe it works perfectly well for this game, as Touhou is quite colorful. In a sense, the same principle applies for the kind of experiment they brought this time around. Perhaps the only confusing thing is once there is a complete cluster F. In a normal bullet hell, it isn't that big of a deal as you move in a specific direction, but here, due to the nature of the enemies and some stages, you will see bullets all over the place. And to be honest, between managing characters and watching their HP, I would have liked if the enemies had a particular color while attacking, or something like that, just to understand the severity of some moves, or if I had to deploy some more barriers. With this, I will say that the graphics are an 8. The main dish that comes with the bullet hells works quite well, aside from my only picky complaint, and the general art is quite beautiful. The design of characters, backgrounds, animations while in visual novels and other details like that. But to be honest, it would have been cool to have some animated scenes. I believe that would have given much more life to this game. And last but not least, its music. I could say that this OST is composed by two parts. Somewhere around 27 tracks are usual on the visual novel, the preparation screen, bass, and stuff like that. For the most part they are chill tunes that go quite well in these situations, in general swinging between melodic and jazzy compositions, with exception of some specific ones like Battle Preparation, that throws some light martial rhythm along some tubular bells and air instruments. While this half isn't the most engaging, as background tunes while developing some ideas work quite well, but once you jump into a stage, the other half, like 27 tracks, share a rearranged version of what was originally composed by Sun. Most of them rely on synthesizers, while adding some metal in between, and oh boy, I simply love this OST. Since I heard it, I randomly play some of these tunes from time to time, as they are quite amazing. Now, I know this is a bold statement, but between all the rearranged versions I have heard so far, this is one of my favorites. I mean, the original ones are quite cool, and some rearranged versions share a nice essence, but this OST hit the right spot. Sure, I am not the biggest of fans of electronic, but I will listen to them for a lot of time. To me, the OST is a 10. In all seriousness, give them a check. If you like most of original compositions, I am sure you will enjoy this one. Touhou Spell Carnival final score is an 8.3. It is a good strategic bullet hell where I definitely enjoyed my time. It isn't long, and it has an extraordinary replay value as you can change characters really easy. But it is also true that I cannot openly recommend it if you do not enjoy heavy micromanaging. However, if that is not a big deal for you, then yep, it is a cool game to grab on a sale. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.